If I can have your attention, please, I have 6 o'clock. I hereby call Patrick County Board of Supervisors Monday, April 22nd of 2024 work session meeting to order. It will start off with the invocation by Mr. Chris Hughes of Springs of Life Camp.
Let's pray. Father, we're so thankful, Father, for days like today. We get to see your glory on full display, Father, in the changing weather. Lord, just signs of better things ahead. I pray that as we enter into our time this evening, Father, as we talk about your business here in Patrick County, Father, just pray for clarity and for wise counsel and direction, Father, and just continue to provide for our community, Lord, and just thank you for what you're doing. Just again, we praise you in your name. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Marshall, would you kindly lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, now we'll have a moment of silence in recognition of the U.S. military serving here and abroad and all public safety workers. Thank you. Please be seated. We'll start our regular session off with the approval of the meeting agenda. Do we have any amendments?
Yes. Hello. We do have one amendment. I need to add for the public hearing, item number 3 under new business. It states schedule public hearing for CSA budget amendment greater than 1%. We also need to add $600,000 from the school construction.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
So approval of the meeting agenda with the added distribution of $600,000 from the 1% sales tax for school funds.
Make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Call for a vote. Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Kendrick?
Aye.
Mr. Wood?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion carries. All right, so we'll move on into new business. We have Mr. Sam Irby, I apologize, Mr. Sam Irby with Innovative Insurance Group, our health insurance renewal.
Yes, you want me in this chat, huh?
Please.
Thank you.
That's a hot seat for you.
I appreciate it. Thank y'all for having me. And I think, Amy, you're going to put some information up on the board in a minute. Yeah. Oh, you want to go straight to that one? Okay. I wanted the first one on the tab. I think it would be the best place to start, which were the RFP quotes from the beginning. Thank you.
You talking on?
I'll talk, okay. Well, I'll give you a little background. This year we had requested Anthem to give us a renewal. We'd like to get them as early as possible. They were a little slow getting it out to us. When it came in, it was a 20% rate increase. If you remember last year when we made the change from the Jefferson Health Plan over to Anthem Blue Cross, we discussed what a good deal it was last year and how this year we might get hit with a little more than usual type renewal because we felt like that y'all were saving right much money last year by making that change. It came in at a 20. I talked with your administration. I contacted Blue Cross to see if I could get it down somewhat. They came back and brought it down to an 18. The administration and I talked again, decided to send that on RFP, which we did, and then it came back in at a 12.75% rate increase. So it got much more manageable by sending it out on RFP. I always feel like an RFP is a good way to go when we feel like we've got a really high renewal. A lot of times, especially when you're fully insured, somebody's looking to buy your business or whatever, but it also forces the incumbent company to really sharpen their pencil and get the rates more in line with what's reasonable, I think. In light of your claims and looking at what you got going on, I do think that 12.75 is reasonable. We had another quote from Centera, which is Optima, well, we call it Optima Health, but Centera Health Plan out of Virginia Beach. And this slide here shows you where the quotes came in. You got your current PPO rates on the left, and all the way to the left, it shows you how many people in each plan. The first plan at the top is your PPO 1,000. You got 14 employees in that. It shows you based on how they enrolled in that third column over. Then it shows the PPO renewal next to that, which shows you the 12.75% increase. You glance all the way to the bottom of the slide, it's showing that the cost is going from a little over 1.5 million to 1.7 million. Blue Cross, I'll talk to you about that POS product in just 1 minute, but you'll notice that that's about a little over a 6% increase, what they call a POS product. I'll explain that in a second. And then Centera Health Plan out of Virginia Beach on the far right at 1.7 million. It's nice to see another company in about the same pricing. We don't give renewals out to other carriers when we bid it. They all ask for it, and we never give it to them because we want to see what their underwriter thinks based on your claims, what the premium should be. So they did not see Anthem's rates or costing at all before they offered their program. So you see they came in very competitive. So then you got Anthem POS there in the middle of the 6.24%. Best way to explain that is to take you back in history for a while. Many years ago, Anthem had just one network, and it was any doctor anywhere you could go see him. It was fee for service. There were no discounts involved. And then later on, they came through with something they call Key Care, which is what y'all have been covered under this PPO, participating provider organization. To be in the PPO, the doctor had to give a discount. Usually it ranged somewhere 7 to 10% off their fees. So they went around and marketed that to all the providers, and that's what people have been under for 30-some, well, ever since before I got in business, so it's been 50 years ago. About 30 years ago, 25 to 30 years ago, Blue Cross came out with something called Health Keepers HMO. And everybody had heard all the terrible things about HMOs. Probably remember the name Kaiser. They were one of the first. And they started on the West Coast and came this way. But anyway, everybody thought HMO, terrible. You hear bad things about it. Well, in 1994, I bought Blue Cross's HMO and covered my whole family with it from 1994 until they grew up and left home and everything else. I understood the product. The product actually covers the same services, so you're not losing any coverage in service. And it's graduated today from having a primary care physician that you can go to anybody in the network and you're covered just like you are with PPO. So 2 years ago, but you had to use the Health Keepers network, which was a much narrower network, just state of Virginia. A couple of years ago, Blue Cross came through and said, okay, we're going to add a point of service plan, and that's what POS stands for. We're going to add this point of service plan. And if you buy the point of service plan, while you're in Virginia, you have to use the HMO network. But if you go out of state, you're covered all across the United States, as long as you see a PPO provider in any state. So right now, to jump back to your PPO that you're using currently, the way that works is, if you see a PPO provider, you're covered. If you go outside of the Blue Cross network completely, you have a higher deductible, but you can still go. You've got some coverage. It's just not as price effective as being in network. The POS works the same way. As long as you're seeing those doctors across the United States, you're fine. You get out of network, you're going to have a different deductible and out-of-pocket limit that you have to meet. So in essence, having the PPO right now going forward is a very little help to your employees. It's a little help, but it's not a lot of help. The studies that the Blue Cross has done that I have seen, most everywhere, about 95, 96% of all providers in the state of Virginia that are in the PPO are also in the HMO. So there's very, very little risk of losing your doctor if you make this switch. What we've done for many years is put in the HealthKeepers HMO and the PPO side by side, same benefits, and let employees choose which one they want. So where you would base your contribution, you say, we've got this much money we're gonna put towards this, and if they have to pay a little more to get the PPO than to have the POS product, that's entirely their choice and they can do what they want to do. So that's kind of a rundown on how that works. I don't know if you have any questions at this point. I know I'm kind of running through it kind of fast, but I don't want to hold you too long. Y'all good with that? Okay. If you will, Amy, go to that next one which says PPO. All right, yeah, this right here, up at the top there, you'll see it says census, then it says your $1,000 deductible, and going left to right, it says the current payroll deductions that the employees pay based on whichever plan they want to choose, the 1,000, the 2,000, or the 3,000. The 3,000, by the way, the high deductible health plan, IRS rules require that go to a 3,200 this year with 5,500 out of pocket. So just a little bit of a change on that program benefit-wise. The column under FY24 is showing you the current deductions that the employees are paying to belong to those plans. And today, right at the bottom of that column, you'll see the employer cost is $1,203,000. That's what y'all are paying. The employees are paying the remainder of that. The next column over says zero at the top. That's if you keep the employee's deduction right where it is for the coming year and buy that PPO, you're going to spend an extra $195,000 based on the 132 people that have coverage, 132 employees covered currently. Okay. The next column over, well, I know that one of the things that Donna had asked me to do was let's look at it with the employee taking half of it and the board taking half of it. That's all the way to the right. With them grabbing 6.37%, you can see the difference, the increase to them to purchase coverage. So that runs it up. You know, employee only on the $1,000 would pay an extra $75 a month. That's a pretty large increase. We hate to see it go that far. So I stuck in a couple of other numbers there. You got a 1.07 increase, you got a 2.14 increase, and that spreadsheet set up, Ms. Walker can make some changes there if you need to look at anything else, just to see where you are. But I think if you look at those two, you'll see there are very modest increases to the employees. They get a little higher as you carry dependents. But those, certainly the employees would rather be in one of those columns than the one all the way to the right. I'll leave it at that. But that's the way it was set up so that you could see the difference in the cost. And then in actuality, the one all the way to the right, by the time you do that split, it's driven your cost down to about $100,000. So you need to increase your budget about $100 to carry it this year at that level. But interestingly enough, if you do decide to offer the POS product alongside it, or if you just said, we're going to do away with PPO altogether and just offer the POS, that is not my recommendation, but if you said that, then employees could keep paying exactly what they're paying, and you'd be at the $97,000 or $100,000 difference. Okay. And now if you'll go to the last one. And this one's a little bit harder to see, but what we tried to do here was mimic the last slide. I didn't realize it would be that hard to see, but anyway, and show you, give you an idea of what the differences would be if you look there, say at that 107 again, which is the second one over. you'll see that the POS would be $206 rather than the $253 they're paying currently for employee only on the $1,000 deductible plan. The PPO in that one, I can't read that number, I think it's $12.60-something cents, I believe, if I remember correctly. So that's that $50-some difference right there in the difference in the PPO and the HMO. So that kind of gives the employee an option to say, well, I believe I've checked my doctors, I believe I'll go with the POS because then I'm not paying more, I'm paying a little less than I've been paying. As far as deductibles, co-insurances, co-payments, drug co-payments, all of that's the same, whether it's PPO or HMO, it doesn't make any difference. So same benefits. What we showed here on this one was continuing the PPO in the 2,000 deductible and then in the 3,000 deductible, and putting a POS plan at the top on the $1,000 deductible because that plan is getting rather expensive, and then putting up the POS in the middle plan, the 2,000 deductible, where you have your most enrollment. If you look at that, you've got over half your people in that 2,000 deductible plan currently. So rather than try to offer 6 plans, which I'd have to get special permission from Blue Cross to do that if you wanted to line them up 3 and 3, we just kind of looked at it and said, well, why don't we maybe do it this way, where you'd have a PPO 2,000 and a PPO high deductible health plan, you'd have a POS on the 2,000 deductible and a POS on the $1,000 deductible, which would give you 4 plans to keep up with rather than 6. Any questions?
Explain the POS and the PPO, kind of like the differences our employees.
Kind of run through that
Yeah.
again? Sure.
Yeah. Well, just the, I think there were some, like the restrictions with the POS.
Well, the only thing with the POS network-wise, if that's what you're speaking of,
Yeah.
when you go into the POS, you're agreeing that while you're getting services in the state of Virginia, you will use the Health Keepers Network, which we will have a little bit of a gap. I was saying a minute ago, it might be 4, 5, 6% of the physicians and providers that are in the PPO that aren't in the HMO in the state of Virginia. So you may have 1 or 2 people. One thing we would encourage everybody, if y'all decide to offer both plans, is please either check with your doctor or contact us and ask them, is your provider a Health Keepers, or Anthem Health Keepers provider? Most of them are. As I said, I live in downtown, not in downtown Cambridge, but in Cambridge, population of about 800 to 1,200 people. We go to Richmond and Raleigh, to Richmond a lot for physicians and stuff, but we started using that product 1994 was when we started using it. It's been a statewide product for many, many years. I would think most of your employees, or a great deal of your employees at some point working elsewhere, probably were under an HMO, under that network. But then when you go out of state, they've kicked it in. The Blue Card system, which protects you PPO nationwide, is also going to protect you POS nationwide. So it's called a Blue Card system, and the doctor in North Carolina will send it back through to Virginia, and it will be, as long as that doctor is a PPO provider in North Carolina, it'll be handled just as your in-network, no separate deductibles or co-pays or anything like that. So it's just a good option to kind of help keep costs down a little bit for those that would like to use it.
Thank you.
So what county administration is recommended is that the contract be awarded to Anthem at the 12.75% increase with the 50-50 split between the county and the employees. The proposed budget that you're reviewing tonight does have the 50% share in it for the increased premium for all employees who are eligible to enroll, and the budget is currently balanced with that amount in there. And then And we're also recommending that we go with the 4 plans that are outlined in that last column. And that's the 2 with the PPO and the 2 with the POS.
Of course, we looked at trying to cover more of the cost for the employee, but with the budget restraints this year, we couldn't make the numbers work. So that's why we proposed the 50-50 split.
Does anybody have any questions? Are we still trying to crunch numbers and digest?
I don't have anything else to pass tonight.
You have any questions?
Ms. Walker, could you zoom in a little bit to the what was recommended over there to us? Because I know I'm the closest, but there's still a lot of numbers that are small from this angle.
Yeah, if you look in the far right column, Amy's gonna fix it so you can see it. That's the 6.37, which is half of the 12.75 increase. You would not offer the PPO on the $1,000 deductible plan, which is up top. You would just do the POS product. The next product, which is the 2,000, which has 80-some of your employees in that one, you would offer both PPO and POS product. And then the last one down below, you would just offer PPO on the high deductible health plan with the HSA.
And if we go with that split that we're looking at there now, what would the cost to the individual employee and the county be again?
What you're looking at there is the actual cost to the employee.
Okay.
So where the $1,000, the top plan, they're paying $253 right this minute, they would go to $269 if they took the POS plan. Or either that person in that $1,000 deductible could jump down to the $2,000 deductible at $116 if they wanted to, or at $173. So what would happen is they go from $253 to $173 if they wanted to keep that PPO plan. And that $80 that they would be saving times 12 is $960 towards the increase of an extra $1,000 of deductible. So on the front end, it's pretty comparable to the $1,000 right there deductible. And then the high deductible health plan on a PPO basis would be jumping from $50 to $64 for the employee only. And you can arrange these however you want them. I mean, you know, you can say, well, I don't want to do that, I'd rather do this. But this was just, we felt like a good compromise maybe with the budgetary constraints we were working within.
Do we have copies of that?
Pardon me?
Do we have copies of that?
Yes, yes, we can get you copies.
guess we need to wait till we get the copies and have time to study them.
I couldn't hear you.
We're gonna need to get something in writing with those where we can study them instead of just looking on them for the night.
All right, yes, sir. I'll get them together and get them emailed over to you tomorrow. I want to recheck them and be sure all the numbers are exact. I think they are.
It'll be fine if they're a little lower.
Sir?
It'll be fine if they're a little lower when you recheck.
That'd give us time to look at some things in the budget too, to see what, I know,
There is an agenda item cover sheet that has the possible board actions associated with this agenda item.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'm going to put the motion on the floor. I move to award the contract for the fiscal year 24-25 health insurance renewal to Anthem with the employer-employee cost share and available plan options as recommended. I don't like it because I'd like to take better care of the employees in this, but the budget constraints, and if we're going to get this budget moved and finalized, we're going to have to go ahead and get these items taken care of.
so I've got a motion, no second?
No second.
And no second. So do I have another motion?
I'll make a motion.
We table the decision until we have enough information to make an educated decision that benefits the county as well as its employees
I'll second that
and the
one.
taxpayers, of course.
So I have a motion to table, and also I have a second. Move to vote, Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Kendrick? Aye. Mr. Wood?
Aye.
And I as well. So motion is to table until we can get further information and look a little deeper in the budget.
All right. Do you like the setup that way, or, as far as using POS and the PPO? And we'll rework it to be sure it's exactly right. Or if you got any other suggestions, we're happy to work it up any way you want to look at it.
I like the options to the employee, so the option the employee can pick
Right.
what they
either
think.
one.
So I do like allowing more options to our employees. Anybody have anything?
My understanding was they would have an option between the two.
Yes.
And, I like PPO a lot better. It's got a lot more flexibility to it, but maybe somebody doesn't have the financial wherewithal for that. So my understanding is they would have choice of either one.
They would, and that's what we were thinking back.
Yeah, right. And that's about as fair as you can get.
Was how could we give some relief to those that maybe we're looking to spend their money in different areas, a different way, the POS product. As I said, my whole family was covered under the HMO when it had a primary care physician for years, and it works very well. No, never had a problem with it as far as claims and those types of things. So I think that's
Somebody younger might want to choose that.
I'm sure they
And
will.
somebody older that has a few more, might want to go to different specialists.
Or even somebody with family that has an extended healthcare issue that I know they're already paying a huge chunk of their check in insurance. So,
Yeah, they can take that choice and
Right.
drop that a little bit.
right, help them tweak it and work with it.
Thank y'all. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your
Appreciate
time.
it.
Good to
Thank
see
you.
y'all.
All right, so next we have the Child Services Act funding, which is greater than 1% of the annual budget.
Yeah, so this is revisiting from last month where y'all approved that amount that was over the 1% of our budget, so we need to schedule a public hearing for that. We also added on the $600,000 request for the schools capital improvements. So like I said, there's an agenda item attached with motions to this. So it would be scheduling a public hearing for May 13th to allocate funds for both of those.
That's the CSA and the 1%, or for the I'm sorry.
600,000 out of the 1%, yeah.
For the schools, yes. All right, so do I have a motion for a public hearing for May the 13th for these issues?
I'll make a motion that we schedule a public hearing for both issues. CSA budget amendment, greater than 1%, and the Patrick County School distribution of $600,000.
So I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Put for a vote, Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Kendrick? Aye. Mr. Wood?
Aye.
And aye as well. So motion carries. We will have a public hearing on board meeting on May the 13th. Thank you. All right, next we have our budget presentation.
All right. Good evening, gentlemen. Tonight, we bring you Patrick County's fiscal year 25 budget. This budget was developed with intention for what is best for Patrick County in the present and in the future. It is a result of over 3 months of work. Here's a review of our budget calendar so far and proposed remaining budget calendar. So, department budgets were due to the finance office January 15th. As soon as we got them in, Lori started working on compiling them all. Draft budget was distributed to budget committee members the beginning of March. We had our joint budget committee meeting with the Patrick County School Board and BOS budget committee members on March 8th. And then the draft budget was distributed to the remaining Board of Supervisors that following Monday. That same Monday, the Board of Supervisors voted to set the real estate tax rate at the same as it's been, so there was no increase in Patrick County's real estate tax this year. Tonight, we're at the budget presentation and Board of Supervisor work session. There is an agenda item to schedule the public hearing for May 13th. The proposed budget public hearing would be May 13th, and then proposed adoption is May 28th. So original budget requests were approximately $1.5 million over projected revenues, but staff with input from the board present a balanced budget with no tax increases. A little background on this year's budget process. First, we looked at a local government's obligated expenses in Virginia. As we all know, we have the local composite index, other things that local governments in Virginia are responsible for. These expenses include expenses are included that are associated with public education, human services, jail operations, constitutional offices, courts, the cost to conduct our annual audit, etc. Then we looked at our fixed costs, such as utilities, insurance, fuel, etc. Then we looked at costs associated with operating our already established local government services, such as the cost to execute building inspections, run a finance department, take care of animal control, run EMS, maintain our buildings and facilities, parks and recreation programming, solid waste, and etc. This is a breakdown of where our tax dollars go. This is pretty standard across the state. Like I said, due to the LCI and other things in Virginia that local governments have to participate with state programs. Of course, the largest portion of our taxes go to education. Once again, that's not different from other localities. Next is public safety, which includes emergency services and law enforcement. And then it goes down from there. Public works, government administration, health and welfare, which is social services, community development, non-departmental, judicial administration, and finally parks and recreation. Changes to this year's budget from previous budgets look to address Deferred issues such as not having staff support for planning commission or land use issues. The need for Patrick County to do capital improvement planning. Salary adjustments, adjusting for cost of operations that were not forecasted properly in previous budgets, rising costs of electricity, and as you just heard, our health insurance, replacement of essential equipment and pressing capital improvements, and public safety and health and welfare needs that couldn't be funded in previous years. A local government's budget should be aligned with their strategic priorities, capital improvement plan, and comprehensive plan. While these are either in the process of being updated or developed, we relied on the organization's identified needs and verbal feedback from Board of Supervisors to base our budget strategy. Priorities communicated from the Board of Supervisors that were included during this year's budget creation were not increasing taxes, addressing the vulnerability of our rural localities' EMS services, better tracking and attention to equipment maintenance, and employee retention, including equity in pay, staff appreciation, and development. These are some of the proposed budget highlights. As I said, we present a balanced budget with no tax increases and a little over $39,000 reserved for contingency. The budget includes added staff capacity to fill basic local government operation gaps, including planning commission, land use staff support, communications, and addressing deferred maintenance needs and capital planning. There was increased cost of health insurance. As referenced in the presentation, we're proposing that this increase be evenly split between Patrick County and the employee. Also included are cost of living or market-based salary adjustments. Here is a chart of, as you know, in December of 2023, the Board of Supervisors approved a review of 100% county-funded positions. This is a chart of department heads. Most of our department heads, some we have that aren't comparable to our neighboring localities based on how we combine jobs sometimes. But this is the ones that, you know, like all of our positions were reviewed, and this shows a comparison. We only compared to neighboring localities. Localities where our employees could drive to if they saw, you know, a comparable job. So we looked at Carroll, Floyd, Henry, and Franklin. We also took into account that Henry and Franklin are much bigger and have more revenue, and we looked at tenure of employees, responsibility of their job. We took into account a lot of things when making the recommended salary adjustments. Localities across the state have pursued these salary studies and adjustments in recent years due to frozen salaries during the 2010s and the recent Great Resignation following COVID. For background, Patrick County's salaries were frozen from the years of 2017 to 2020. It's generally accepted that when salaries are frozen for 1 year, it takes twice that long to catch up. So we're hoping that by 2028, we'll be on an even playing field with our neighbors. Across the board, cost of living adjustments, which are common practice in local government, we're starting to find that they don't have the same financial impact for all employees. So a 3% raise for a maintenance worker versus a 3% raise for a department head who's been here for a couple decades are drastically different. And that's where we see these huge gaps in pay and what we're trying to remedy. So it's essential that an organization survey the market occasionally to ensure that our employees are being compensated appropriately for the job that they perform. Patrick County's recent compensation study recommended a total increase of $239,500. The proposed fiscal year 25 budget includes just a total increase of $101,834 for these employees. Averaged together, this is an average increase of 5.1% for the positions surveyed. Fiscal year 25 salary adjustments are still below target market rate or in line with Patrick County's established salary scales. Making the recommended salary adjustments is essential to retain and hire qualified staff to do the important work of Patrick County's government. Next one. Additional proposed budget highlights, increased funding for public safety, including law enforcement, emergency services, and contributions to volunteer fire departments and rescue squads. Increased funding for health and welfare, funding for real estate assessment. I called, and doing research for the budget, I called Martinsville and Henry County's Association of Realtors. I knew that our average home sale price had increased. To be quite honest, I didn't realize it would be this much. But Patrick County's average home sale price was $154,000 in 2020 and is now over double that, $322,000 in 2024. The Code of Virginia requires that properties be assessed at fair market value. Also included in the budget is increased funding to cover the rising cost of electricity. Just as we're all seeing that at home, we are not immune to that. And then lastly, increased funding for necessary capital improvements and replacement of essential equipment. There were more, of course, requests for equipment or capital improvements. We included the ones that we thought couldn't wait another year. Those are budgeted to come out of our reserve funds. These are one-time, non-recurring expenses. Once again, like I said, we cut down at least half, if not more than half, of the request for these. They are non-recurring expenses. Our unassigned fund balance is currently 19% of our total expenditures. That was presented back at Davenport's presentation a couple months ago. If the budget is approved as proposed, our unassigned fund balance would still be 18% of our total expenditures, so it only dropped 1%. Earlier this year, during their financial review presentation, Davenport Financial Advisors recommended maintaining an unassigned fund balance of 15%. So we would still be over the recommended policy of what we need to keep in our unassigned fund balance. And here's just a general overview and chart of our revenues as it's included in your books, and then expenses. And as you can see, they're balanced. So now we are ready to take any questions or future direction.
Yeah, I got a couple. Yeah, I'm, as I've already expressed to you, I still think we need to work on some of this stuff a little more, probably in Budget Committee.
Okay. What specific concerns do you have, Mr. Kendrick?
Well, I've got quite a bit. I think there's other places that I know there's been some contracts that I've got some disputes on. There's a lot of stuff on this page right here that the one Budget Committee I was in, we decided to take off, and they're back on here tonight. And I just soon not say what they are right now.
Do you have any idea? Okay.
And I will say, but
Well, I mean, it's a work session. That's what we're here for.
all right. Well, there's one that I know about, and I've discussed with you. There was a contract on the HVAC maintenance that we could save several $1,000s with going with the low bidder instead of going with the high bidder. And some of the stuff like ambulance, loader to transfer station, and all that, we decided not to do that.
Yeah, the ambulance is not on there, Mr. Kendrick.
All right, it's on this paper, and some of the stuff I ain't seen except tonight. Replacement of essential equipment, ambulance.
What page is that on?
Well, I've got the same thing that you got either. This is on one of these supplemental sheets you give me. And I may not be reading it right, but like I said, I ain't had time to study this stuff much, and we haven't actually, with a whole committee, I haven't been in with one meeting.
Okay. Yeah, so your the updated capital improvement sheet.
This is priorities for Patrick County FY 2025 budget, capital investments. It's got the curb and gutter on the parking lot out here we discussed.
Correct.
It's on here though. Is it in the budget?
The curb and gutter is still in the budget.
But we said that day that we didn't need it.
Okay, so take the curb and gutter out.
That's the reason I'm saying we need to set up another meeting with the budget committee.
Okay.
Because I could go on and on.
Okay. Well, Mr. Simmons, who is also on the budget committee, is not here.
Yeah.
So
that's another reason we probably should. We should set up another budget committee meeting before we put this thing out. Because a lot of stuff we probably don't want to discuss tonight.
The problem with that is you have supervisors that aren't on the budget committee, and we're not going to be privy unless you go ahead and discuss it tonight during the work session.
Well, the 5 years that I've been on the budget committee, we've always prepared a budget, and we've been involved with everything that y'all been doing on some of the meetings so we know what was going on. And then we present it to the whole board to whittle it on it some more, or whatever they decided to do. And it ain't went that way this year. I think the only meeting I've been in is March. And even this insurance stuff, you know, last year, year before, I told Mr. Irby that he needed to start on that like November or October the previous year, and he did last year. But if he did this year, I hadn't heard anything about it until tonight.
Okay. So you mentioned removing the curb and gutter from the county admin parking lot.
I went back and looked at that again since. I don't see where it would gain anything. I think the improvements they've done will already take care of that problem.
Do what now? Sorry.
I think the improvements they did to the building will probably take care of that problem.
Okay.
Water drainage?
Yeah.
All right.
You wanna
Anybody
go
else?
Back to the ambulance?
So the ambulance was taken out probably 5-6 weeks ago.
Okay, but it's still on this paper that we got.
I don't know what sheet that is, but the sheet that I'm looking at is page 80 of the budget.
What about the loader to transfer station that took out?
The loader is still in there. I know there's questions about the loader, which I completely understand. We pulled maintenance cost on the equipment at the transfer station. And once again, it's completely up to y'all how you want to pursue this. But over the last 5 years, maintenance cost of the John Deere and the Caterpillar have drastically increased. In 2020, we paid $22,000 in maintenance or repairs. In 21, we paid $15,000. In 2022, we paid $20,000. In 2023, we paid $19,500. And this year so far, we've paid $17,000 in repairs.
What are we going to pay per year on a lease for the next 5 years?
It's $57,000. Sorry, 50, yeah. So page 80 in your budget book, it's $53,000 per year.
And my understanding is maintenance is included in that contract.
Yes.
So that's
But once again, that's up to y'all. That's just,
Well, I don't think I've even seen that, but the sheet that I did have on it, it was, the excuse was used for it for $65,000 for
That-
repairs to pin and bushings, and we put that on hold last year, so.
right. And the original estimate, I think the budget we presented to y'all on March 8th, I think the estimate was higher. Was it 60? It was 60,000. Once we got the quotes back, the lowest was 53,000 and included maintenance.
4 or 5 years.
4 or
that's
5
a-
years.
It's a lease, right?
Pardon?
It's a lease, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Is it a 5-year contract we got to do, or
Is it what, sorry?
if we do it, is it we have to do it for 5 years?
Yeah, well, we can do it for a shorter or longer period of time.
Well, I thought the goal was to get out of the transfer station business if we could.
That, to be quite honest, that's something that's going to take a lot more than a budget season to try to figure out,
Well, we figured it's a 3-year term the last time we discussed it, and.
Right, we still have a 2-year contract with Republic. And I went last week to visit New River Resource Authority. So we're trying to be proactive in looking at what does our solid waste program look like in Patrick County. But, that's not, unfortunately, it's not going to be solved.
Can you solve it in 2 years?
It probably can be solved in 2 years, proposals can be brought to y'all within those 2 years. I don't have any idea what those are going to look like now. I don't know of many places that outsource their transfer stations. And so anyways, like I said, we're doing research now to prepare.
Well, that's the reason I'd rather hold off on the loaders in any way we can. And another reason for it is talking about all this stuff listed on this page coming out of reserve funds. That is not exactly balancing the budget the way I see it. Those reserve funds, we need to keep them because we've got our rating back up, and we don't need to get rid of them and get in the same situation we was about 5 years ago.
Okay.
I think we need to look at all of it again.
200,000 of those reserves that we're using toward this are in a capital depreciation.
Yeah,
fund.
I know that one is.
Specifically assigned.
But you're not going to go no more than that one fund?
Pardon?
You're not going to use any more out in that one fund you're talking about?
No, it's that one fund plus it's additional. We've got other reserves for capital improvements that we've done in prior years.
Well, that's what got us in trouble several years ago.
I think my understanding was y'all might have been using them for operations.
Using them for everything, I think.
Well, and that's never been a proposal to use reserves for operations.
Well, I find it incomprehensible that we continue forcing them gentlemen to use that broken equipment down there. And while we do have a transfer station, their safety is our priority, it's our responsibility. So I definitely do not, I think that's a priority. I'm amazed you were able to to work that in there, and I think it definitely should stay in, no doubt about it. I do have two items, one on the jail trustees being paid out of various accounts for the lunches. I think that should be charged back to the Sheriff's Department fund for the simple reason people pay their taxes for those prisoner meals, and that's where it should be coming from. I don't mind if it's taken out temporarily from, recreation or maintenance or whatever, but it should be charged back in again. And I also have a question about when the Sheriff's Department does an auction and makes a large amount of money, should that not be taken back from the budget? Should that not adjust the budget effectively? I don't know if there's a law in Virginia that they get to keep that money and we can't do anything about it, or if it's not, that's a considerable amount of cash that we could trim off of there. And I believe they're at, what, 4% increase this year? Under this budget, the new budget?
4% of what?
Sheriff's Department, they're at a 4% increase this year?
For salaries?
No, all across the board, their whole budget.
See, and as far as charging them back for lunches for the trustees, there's nowhere else they would be reimbursed from to do that. They don't have state funds they get for.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is taxpayers pay taxes, and they know the prisoners are going to be fed with those taxes. They also pay taxes for maintenance, that maintenance gets done. There was a lot of complaints from the public about those charges on credit cards. So my idea with this is to go ahead and charge that back to the Sheriff's Department, since it's their prisoners. They have a budget for care and welfare for those prisoners, okay? And then anybody that has a complaint, we can deal just with the Sheriff's Department budget on it.
So have the trustee meals live in the Sheriff's Department budget?
We can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that can be done, it just doesn't
Yeah.
reduce the county, and that's what I was misunderstood.
No, that's fine. I probably didn't say it correctly.
Well, when we use those inmates, we don't have to pay them any salary or anything on the pay scale, do we?
Correct. That's kind of their payment, is their lunch.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I saw that. If we was paying them to work like we would an employee, I could see not buying their lunch. But if that's the only thing it costs us to save what the employees would cost, it may need to be in a different line or something else. But I don't think that's too much.
That's all I'm suggesting. Just got to.
And I don't know if I'm mistaken or not, but a lot of the counties pay their trustees a very small amount per hour, somewhere in the 50 to 75 cent range that they can spend at the commissary. We're not paying them anything, which I agree. We don't need to give them a job because they're incarcerated for a reason. But I know I had a few come up to the high school to paint my agricultural shop, and I paid them out of my pocket with some Tony's steak and cheese and a Mountain Dew, and they jumped for joy. So, I don't think we should necessarily cut it off completely. I just think we need to be frugal with how we do it and when we do it.
And if we're going to stay into this thing, I noticed it's added 6.5 new positions for needed government. And every year it looks like that keeps happening. The population of the county drops every consensus, but government keeps growing. And it's hard for the common folks to pay for all of that.
Yeah, so
Are these absolutely necessary? I mean, it ain't nothing we can do without.
So those positions are EMS positions due to our paid EMS having to run more calls because of the decline of volunteer squads. So it's 4 EMS positions. As mentioned before, we're the only local government that I know of that doesn't have planning staff. So we have a planning commission that is accepting applications, and y'all are making land use decisions, and we don't have any staff guidance on that. So that was where we couldn't make a full salary work on that, so we contracted. The proposal was to contract for that. And then the other position was capital planning, like we've stated. Weekly, if not daily, I have a department head coming to me about something being broken. There have been things that have come up in the last week, significant items that have come up in the last week that are not in this year's budget, that we're going to have to try to find some way to fund, or either offices are going to have to close early. So we had a position open in maintenance, and so what we're looking at is elevating a position to have somebody help us keep track. So there'll be an administrative, of course they'll jump in and help when needed, but there'll be administrative to help with the things that we've mentioned: capital improvement planning for solid waste, what's next for solid waste, things like that. That's the positions, and then elevating a part-time tourism person to full-time. That will help with tourism, economic development marketing, and also some communications and marketing for the county. There's been a lot of desire to get more information out on the website, on social media, communicate more with the public. So if our tourism position is elevated to full-time, then they can pitch in and help with that stuff as well. So those are the 6.5 positions that are proposed to be added this year.
And the wage thing, I think we discussed that too. You know, Social Security got 3.2%, and most of those people are the ones that pay in these taxes. And it does need to get adjusted. You know, you're paying some of them less than $30,000. You give him 3%. What's that, $900? And then you got somebody making $100,000 or more, and you give them 3%, that's $3,000. And every year that gap keeps getting further. Well, why not drop it down? The higher income, drop that down 1% and add it on the lower.
Well, one reason we recommended 3% across the board is because that's what state employees will get.
Well, it looks
and so
like
it makes it kind of difficult if a state employee gets a 3%, no matter what their salary is, and then a county employee, you know, whatever threshold there is, makes it kind of difficult to say you don't get a raise because you make over this amount and you're 100% county funded. So standard practice is, you know, for local governments to match what the state is.
Well, it was some of this stuff confusing in that 99 pages of fine print on one attachment, but it looked like some of the raises were increasing, and I don't know how it was structured or why, but that was one of the questions I had. Some of the raises, and I'm not going to name which one in which places, but some of them were like 19%, some of them were 40-some%.
Well, I don't think any were 40%. Those might have been ones where we had some where positions were split between line items we combined, or the ones where we added salaries. Now there are some increases of 18 or so %. Those were the positions that were the most inequitable in our salary study. There were recommendations of $20,000 salary increases. Of course, we couldn't do that. So we adjusted and we lowered that, but we still did. There are some positions that do have an 18% increase just due to how far off from the market rate it was.
Well, you know, that's been discussed for years, or ever since I've been anything in the county, is comparing to neighboring counties, and it ain't many counties we can compare to. And it's hard to do that. You know, it's nothing the same if you try to compare us with Henry County.
Right.
There's different tax base. There's no way we can do what they do.
And that's why, we're looking more to be in line with Floyd and Carroll is our goal.
That's getting closer if you go on that end. Most time it tries to go the other way for comparisons.
No, of course we can, do whatever changes y'all ask, but, we try to be very conservative and just realistic. Almost every position, Patrick County was the lowest. And that's across all 4 localities. So we don't want to be the lowest, I wouldn't think.
I've also sat in the back of this room for like 3 years, and I've heard over and over, including from you, a couple of times, that, man, we train these people and they just leave and go somewhere else. Well, if you keep making the same mistake and having the same problem, there's one fix to it, and that's to treat your employees the right way.
Well, but where are you going to get it from? You can't pull it out of the woodwork.
The other thing with taking low bids or high bids, and I'm glad you were able to get more money in for the reassessment. Y'all took the low bid on that, and now we're out. If you figure in the increase in property prices, we're probably out $1,075,000, $750,000 a year, rather. Almost $1.75 million
But
every year.
That gets into another discussion. I've asked a question about that. Why you got to wait to 5 years? Why not when a house is built onto or whatever? Why ain't it kept up? Or if one's sold and they didn't pay but $150 for it and they sold it for $300, why we got to wait 4 or 5 years? And that's
Just
the reason
how
I
it
think
is.
an in-house assessor will stop some of that.
And we're talking about that. That's something,
Yeah. But, you know,
But
that's
you can't
a-
get that in before the next budget.
No.
But I agree with you, that's.
We could if we'd have done it when I first asked for it several years ago.
Well, that's
but-
true.
Can't go back and undo that.
We are where we are.
Yeah, but there's still stuff, and I'll just contact you with some of it, because some of it might get into personnel stuff, and I'm not gonna bring it up. And that transfer station, I've discussed that with you before, that I think if you do a study of that, or go down and watch it a while, you can see ways that we could save wearing those loaders out and people getting endangered with that sloppy mess. You know, I've told you some of that.
Great. Mr. Perry, did you have anything?
Not at this time.
Mr. Wood, did you have anything?
I kind of agree with Mr. Kendrick over there. You know,
Because somebody did.
in the climate we're in, I know we're behind. Trust me, I'm in public education. I know we're behind. But I can't justify $9,500 bump in 1 year to one employee. I mean, that's more than a third of what some households make in our county in a year. And I know there might be a little bit more that they're gonna do. You know, I saw one over here, you know, put 20, I don't know what I'll combine to make a $20,000 increase, but that was somewhere over there. I do have a couple questions not related about salary. We'll get off that topic for a minute. I will tell you I'm on page 49 in the book. That way we can all kind of be on the same page. I'm trying to understand the contract that we have with Patrick and Henry Community College for the upkeep of that building. Do we
Yeah,
know?
so I contacted them.
Okay.
They said back in the late 90s, when all of that came about, there is nothing in writing. It's just kind of like a lot of these things that have come up through the budget is gonna take time.
Okay.
The practices of Patrick County not having things in writing is not gonna be fixed in one budget season.
Right.
Anyways, so it's just, what is going on now is what was accepted and generally, and has been mutually agreed upon through verbal. So, but they did say that they'd be happy to sit down and talk to us about how to solidify our partnership with them.
Okay, because it just kills me that, you know, we're paying, proposed in 25, $33,500 for that building. They're making money off of offering classes, and you know, I know some of our kids are not having to drive to the college in Martinsville, but you know, that's still a lot of money going out to their building when it's a money maker for them. That was one of the things I had. Other thing, let's see. I think a lot of the people in the room, you kind of explained it to me some, but I think a lot of them. The EDA on page 69 about, you know, it seems like they get a chunk of money, but then we end up paying a whole lot of their bills. I'm not quite sure how all that works out.
Yeah, and I've actually put it on the agenda, they meet this coming Wednesday.
Okay.
And I've added it to their agenda to ask them about covering some of the operational costs. You know, with economic development, you do have to travel outside the county lines. And so I put it on their agenda to look at seeing what they could budget for operational expenses next year.
Because it just seems like they have a lot of control over their budget. We don't have much say-so over it, but we still give them $215,000 a year. I am happy to see that we are including a bump up for fire and EMS. You know, I do appreciate that, and I think everybody on the board is probably in agreement with that.
Yes.
I hope so, at least. I do appreciate that going in there, and the budget still, you know, looking like it is, because that's a well-deserved thing. But I do think we need a little bit more time, obviously, to look at this and ask a few more questions to figure out exactly where we're at and where we want to be. Personally, I'd love to be able to put away more than $38,000, even drop a tax rate of %, which I know that's going to be very difficult. 1% on our tax rate is how many $100,000? A lot.
Sorry. Yeah, where we said it, I'm sorry, I hadn't looked at that recently.
It's a whole, you know, it's a lot, but you know, that's just something I think we should work for. You know, I would love to be able to put away more than $38,000 in case we do have a major issue that we need to take care of in the future. But you know, we'll talk about some more things later on, but I appreciate you having answers for the questions I've had tonight. So thank you for that.
I'd just make one statement to the reason some of these increases in salaries are large is because a lot of these people have been grossly underpaid. And that's the same as asking them to volunteer some of their time if they're underpaid to do really hard jobs, really difficult jobs. And I've sat in on a lot of budgets, a lot of budget committees over the years, the last 40 years. And I got to tell you, I'm amazed at the work you girls did on this. I appreciate it. It's really something. I can't believe you got this in without a tax increase.
And one thing I would like to ask on the salaries, I think it's very risky for us to go through and pick and choose and decrease salaries when the new salary scales are based on a market study and stuff. So I guess what I would like some direction on is, do you want us to look at like the low end of our salary scale? Any type of kind of general direction? Because once again, if I start picking and choosing, I'm going to decrease this person's salary versus not this person. I think that gets us into risky territory.
I don't think we've asked to decrease anyone. I think we're just comparing what they are this year comparing to what it's supposed to be next year. I think when we see a plus 19%, it kind of doesn't sit too well with at least a few people on here,
And I do know that with these salary studies and neighboring localities, they all have capped their increase at 20%. And so that's what, in my head, we just kind of said we wouldn't do anything over 20%, even though some of them were recommended over 20%. And we tried to address the ones that had the biggest, like I said, were the biggest gap first, and then sprinkled in other raises for the ones that were kind of second tier. And like I said, hopefully by, 2028, which we got, every year it's gonna, that finish line's gonna keep moving. But hopefully by 2028, we can be competitive.
Because we've got to, pinch every penny we have, because you just showed us over here that average home sales in county went from 150 something to
322.
322. So when that reassessment comes through, if we don't raise our tax rate a penny, Lord, it's going to be bad for the homeowner. So, whatever we can cut out, but still, respect our employees and the taxpayers and everybody, I think is what we're really going to have to focus on over the next, between now and May 28th.
You kind of touched on this, but so like you've got your tier 1s, tier 2s, tier 3s about how, so that is a ongoing plan, I guess.
Yeah. And the biggest differences we saw were the lower paid employees and honestly what should have been the higher paid employees. Our kind of middle level employees were pretty, you won't see big jumps there because theirs weren't as far off.
But then over the next several years, gradually build that up so that they are.
Yeah. In a government that runs as lean as we do, when you lose one person, I mean, it's like the economic development job. That thing is restarted 3 times because there's nobody else in that department. So when that person leaves, you're literally starting from scratch every single time. And we have a lot of 1, 1.5, and 2-person departments.
That ain't all because of money, though. I know that on EDA.
Right. I know it's not all, but I'm just saying, as somebody who's changed jobs,
you're going to lose some.
You can, when something pops up that interests you and you see that it pays a lot more than what you're currently making, even though you might not have been looking originally, it might plant a seed. Any other feedback?
Well, I think what you're trying to do with the employees is you had a study done, right? You had a consultant. You're trying to bring equity to the entire county as far as all the employees.
Yeah.
And that can be hard at first. It's going to be rough.
Can't do it all in 1 year either. It's going to have to go.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I guess is the direction to try to schedule a budget committee meeting, I guess probably as soon as possible. And then did y'all want to try to schedule another collective work session before the May 13th meeting? Or, I didn't know about Board of Supervisors members who aren't on the budget committee.
I think a work session for all of us would be beneficial.
Okay.
like all of y'all, but I still want my voice heard.
Yeah.
Not just two of us on there.
Also, if one of the supervisors can't go to that meeting, the budget committee meeting,
Yeah.
I'd like to be called to be able to sit in on that.
Okay. So staff will rally back, get together first thing in the morning, and we'll send y'all proposed dates for Mr. Kendrick and Mr. Simmons, the budget committee meeting, and then a work session. It would probably be next week sometime.
Preferably after 4 p.m.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be in the evening. So we'll get back to you with both of those. And then there is a agenda item to schedule a public hearing for May 13th, but if, that's up to y'all on how to proceed with that.
When does the budget have to be finalized? May 31st?
Well, it has to be finalized by June 30th, but to get everything in the computer and just everything ready to go for July 1st, we like to have a month, I'd say at least 3 weeks I think last year it was passed pretty late and it really crunched. Yeah.
I couldn't remember sure if it was May or June, but.
Yeah, and we are
state was so-
still awaiting the state budget. As everybody knows, they're reconvening on May 13th. Supposedly, they'll have a budget by the end of that week. And so just like y'all had to do the last 2 years, there will probably have to be, amendments made based on state funding later in the summer, I would assume. Who knows? Maybe they will get it done in May.
Doubt it.
We'll see.
And if we do schedule a public hearing for May 13th, we will have to put in an advertisement at the end of this week, and it'll be for this budget, and we can go down from there. I mean, the bottom line's not going to change.
But we feel certain that we can have another work session before the 13th.
I would think so.
Right, we'll
Yeah, yeah.
need to advertise this on Friday.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll get the paper, and
Yeah.
the bottom line will change,
Yeah.
just where it goes will change. Whatever, if we reduce expenditures, whatever the balance is that we cut, would go into contingency then. So the bottom line would be the same.
Go into contingency or go in some of that capital improvement stuff that we don't cut out.
I would like to make a motion to schedule a public hearing for the fiscal year 24-25 budget for May 13th, 2024.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second for vote. Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Kendrick?
Aye.
Mr. Wood?
Aye.
And I as well. So the motion carries. We'll have a public hearing for May the 13th, to reference our budget. Thank you for that, Ms. Sims.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your hard work. I know
Yes, thank you very much. The staff, Lori, Donna, and then all the department heads, everybody has been very great to deal with, and, any request I have, getting right back to me, making cuts. Everybody's been very easy to work with.
What time we do that meeting on the 13th? 6 o'clock?
Yes.
All right, I have to decompress here for a second so we can focus on what's next. That's a lot to take in. So again, thank you all for all your hard work on the budget. So there's a presentation in the hearing. So next, I guess we're ready to go into closed session.
Okay. I move that the board convene in closed meeting pursuant to the Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1 to discuss and consider the following: Planning Commission, Peters Creek District, term expires January 28. Economic Development Authority, Dan River, term expires August 25, and pursuant to the Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A3, discuss the acquisition of real property for a public purpose where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the board's bargaining position or negotiating strategy.
There's a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Move for a vote. Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Kendrick? Aye. Mr. Wood?
Aye.
And I